Everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be finishing up our series on run-ons and comma splices. So this is, one does not simply make a run-on sentence that never ends. Hopefully you know that by now. But this is part 5, authentic materials. So we're going to be looking at run-ons in real life and talking about what kind of problems those run-ons create. So we've got a couple blog entries, a speech, and I think a cartoon to take a look at. So what we've learned, where we are and where we're going. Last time we looked at run-ons and comma splices in short paragraphs. And before that, we looked at comma splices and run-ons, the definitions, and single sentences or pairs to kind of examine what those errors meant. Today we're going to look at the errors in real life, so that's what authentic materials means. I just felt like running. Not in this class. Put a period in when you need to. Later on, we're going to look at other rules for using commas. So if you're kind of confused still about what a comma splice is and how to use a comma correctly, I'm going to break that down in some really short lectures to kind of talk about each rule for comma use. Our plan for run-ons. Learning first what it is, how do I find and fix, comprehension, so kind of moving up the steps a little bit, examining the errors. Now we're kind of on analysis, looking for run-ons in real life, and that leads us to planning how we're going to do this when we go into our papers. And then you'll try practicing on your own and writing and getting feedback and revising your work, which kind of moves us up to do it again, and then keep on doing it. So what is a run-on again? A lot of times when I ask students in class, what is a run-on sentence? The answer I receive is a really long sentence. And I think I showed you guys this little picture before. It's tiring to read sentences that go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But that's actually not really what a run-on is. Really long sentences can still be grammatically correct. For example, this is my mom's blog. My mom has been keeping this blog for at this point in time, I think 10 years, 13 years, something like that. And there's my mom, so pretty. So it's her 2-sentence book club, and it's kind of fun for all of her blog readers, which she has many. She summarizes a book and talks about what she thinks of it in just 2 sentences, but the sentences are extremely long. This is on the Scent Keeper. I'm not even going to read this whole thing to you, but this is a blog entry, and I've put in bullet points so you can see how long these sentences are. So these are sentences that go on and on and on and on, but they're actually combined the correct way, and we're going to break down just this first paragraph. This first sentence, I misspoke. Yeah, it looks like a paragraph, but it's not. I also did get permission from her, by the way. She's delighted that we're looking at one of her blog entries, so it's okay. I didn't ask about the picture, so I hope she's all right with that too. It's actually the first sentence there that looked like a paragraph was what is called a compound complex sentence. We talked about those before. That's when we have basically a combination of independent clauses and dependent clauses connected the correct way. So it isn't often, independent clause, that an author relies first and foremost on the sense of smell to evoke images to create haunting, lyrical prose, delight a reader, and heighten the connection with characters. We have this dependent marker word that. Get my pen. And then we have fanboys, a coordinating conjunction here, comma, but. But that is exactly what Erica Bauermeister has done in this fascinating tale. Independent clause, comma, but, with the conjunction and then the next clause. That caught my imagination and kept me enthralled until an ending that, while slightly open-ended, was nonetheless satisfying. So we've got a lot of independent clauses, a lot of dependent clauses. They are correctly joined. There we go. There we go. We have a little bit of word repetition here, but this is one of her earlier ones. But the blog readers really like it, and so do I. Every entry is only 2 sentences. However, if she was in a class and trying to write about a book this way, it would really cause some reader fatigue. So a reader would get tired out and maybe confused. It would be hard to follow those ideas. And even the way that I broke it down, it's probably a little confusing. So I'll read it all together. It isn't often that an author relies first and foremost on the sense of smell to evoke images, to create haunting lyrical prose, delight a reader, and heighten the connection with characters. But that is exactly what Erica Bauermeister has done in this fascinating tale that caught my imagination and kept me enthralled until an ending that, while slightly open-ended, was nonetheless satisfying. Again, I think if you hear it out loud, you can hear where those pauses happen, but if you're just reading it, it's a little bit more difficult to pause and to break up the different ideas there. So, could we make it into more sentences? Sure we could. It wouldn't be great for her book club because it's more than 2 and people would be confused, but it isn't often that an author relies on a sense of smell, period. In this novel, smell is used to evoke images, create haunting lyrical prose, delight a reader, and heighten the connection with the characters. Erica Baumeister has written a fascinating tale. The book caught my imagination. It kept me enthralled until an open-ended conclusion, which was still satisfying. So now we have a little bit more sentence variety. Medium sentence, long, medium, short, and then a little bit longer one. It would be less reader fatigue. It might not be as much fun for her blog followers. But again, if you were doing this in real life and you had a blog of your own, or you were posting something on social media, you don't want super long sentences on social media, right? The idea is to capture people's attention quickly, get them drawn in, to get followers, etc. And certainly if you were writing an academic essay, you want to show your teacher that you understand what went on. And your teacher, something to consider for me, everyone, I have typically every week between depending if I've assigned all my classes a paper in the same week, which I try not to do, I would have 100 papers to grade that week. So you can imagine if you have super long sentences, how that might be difficult for your teacher to read and understand as well, even though they're hopefully very bright and well read. It can be kind of confusing. So think about sentence variety when you're writing in real life. If you want to find this blog, it's Karen's 2-Sentence Book Club. You can Google that and you can find it. So let's review. If those were not run-on sentences, then what is a run-on sentence? Well, a run-on sentence is also called a fused sentence. Fused means that we're joining 2 or more things as if they are one. And fused sentences are done incorrectly with no proper conjunctions or punctuation between the sentences. A comma splice is except that there is a comma splicing or splitting the sentences apart. So you can't just take a comma out of a comma splice because it turns it into a run-on. And a lot of times if I tell people that they have a comma splice error, they'll just take out the comma. But then you're just turning it into the other type of error. And similarly, a lot of times when I tell people they have a run-on, they'll throw a comma in there, and then you're turning it into a comma splice. So just be kind of aware of that. How can you fix them? Well, there's 5 different ways. You can add a period, so that's a full stop. You can add a semicolon, that looks kind of like a colon and kind of like a comma. That's kind of like a moderate pause. You can have a comma, which is like a brief pause, and a fanboys conjunction. Those are also called coordinating conjunctions. Fanboys stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. When you have that, you can't just have a comma on its own because a comma is a brief pause and it's not a strong enough piece of punctuation to properly join those sentences together. It would be like if I had a flat tire and I tried to fix it with super glue. It's not going to work. At least not for the whole time. Elmer's glue, certainly. Let's think about it that way. I have a flat tire and I pour Elmer's school glue onto it. Not going to happen. Adding a subordinating conjunction, those are also called dependent marker words. Some teachers refer to them as that. So we talked about those after, before, because, since, unless, until, when, wherever. You have the whole list both in your book, or you can look them up online if you're not sure. And then you can also rewrite it completely. So if you're in real life and you're trying to fix it and none of these quite seem right, like doesn't sound right, just rewrite the sentence. All right, so our first authentic material is this cartoon. It's a little bit blurry. How did you get on with your history essay? I got 65, which was more than I expected, but Mrs. Clark said I wrote too much like I talk. I don't really understand what she means. Can you guess where the error is? How did you get on with your history essay is a complete sentence. It's weird. I wouldn't put it that way. I think that this might, I don't know if this might be British. How did you get on? We would say, what grade did you get on your history essay, or how'd you do? I got 65, which was more than I expected. There's a period there. But Mrs. Clark said I wrote too much like I talk. I don't really understand what she means. Okay, I broke it down. This also is not really correct. I don't really understand what she means right here. Notice that it does start with a pronoun. That's where the second sentence starts. And we also have a coordinating fanboys conjunction after a period instead of after a comma. If you're doing creative writing, it's not bad to start a sentence with and or but. If you're doing more formal writing, you've probably heard teachers say that before. Don't start with because, don't start with and or but, because those really are supposed to be coordinating, or those really are conjunctions. They're meant to join one part of a sentence with another. But here, let's just fix this girl's, what she has to say. I got a 65, which is more than I expected, comma, but Mrs. Clark said I wrote too much like I talk. Period. I don't really understand what she means. So now this conjunction is properly joining the one part of the sentence to the other, and then we split this up with a period. And the joke in this little cartoon is that she is saying things all in one breath, and that's probably why she didn't do well on her essay, right? She's writing too much like she talks. I think that is why people have run-ons in their writing. We talk in run-ons a lot of the times. We talk without taking a breath, or we have a lot of things to say all at once, and so we kind of go on and on and on and on. And in writing, it has to be a little bit different. Okay. I want to preface this by saying that this is a political speech from Donald Trump when he was first running for president very early on. And I'm not commenting on the politics of the situation. I'm very apolitical, if you know what that means. But I just think it's kind of interesting because our president really sometimes talks in like a stream of consciousness, and it's a little bit, in this case, it was hard to follow. So this is an excerpt of something that he said, and they have punctuated it as one sentence. I think that the newspaper that did that was being a little bit mean because it's a speech. So it's kind of difficult. You know, it's kind of like the cartoon we just saw. This is how the author of the cartoon has punctuated it, this sentence, right? But she's talking. You could put a period in there. And the same thing with this speech, too. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read just the first part. Look, having nuclear, my uncle was a great professor and scientist and engineer, Dr. John Trump at MIT. Good genes. Very good genes. Okay, very smart. The Wharton School of Finance, very good, very smart. You know, if you're a conservative Republican, if I were a liberal, if I ran as a liberal Democrat, they would say I'm one of the smartest people anywhere in the world. It's true. But when you're a conservative Republican, they do number. That's why I always start off. Went to Wharton, was a good student, went there, did this, built a fortune. So this kind of goes into talking about what he learned from his uncle and the countries that currently have nuclear capabilities or might have them. But the problem with Run-Ons is that there are a lot of different ideas all competing with each other. So even that part that I read, there's this part about his uncle being a great professor and scientist. There's the part about him going to this Wharton School of Finance, very good school. There's the idea that if he were in a different party that people might look at him differently, which is probably true because we have a lot of divisions right now, right? Then we start talking about nuclear energy and nuclear deals, how nuclear energy is powerful in terms of politics, that there's 4 prisoners, that they were great negotiators, and they killed us in the negotiations. So that kind of happens in student essays as well. And what happened here, again, whether you like him or not, is that a lot of people in the press took just this part of the speech and tried to pull it apart. So the place that I found this when I was looking for authentic materials was asking people to diagram the sentence, which means to take each piece and kind of try to break it down. Where are the clauses? What are the dependent clauses? The independent? Where do we have a conjunction? All of that kind of thing. And it's difficult to do that. So the message isn't very clear. And if he's trying to convince people that already support him, then he doesn't really need to be as clear. But if he's trying to convince people who don't support him, then it's going to be more difficult. So, he speaks in a little bit of a stream of conscious matter. If he was writing or publishing this, he has written books, possibly himself or possibly with a ghostwriter, but he would probably structure it quite a bit differently, right? So think about that too. The way we speak is different than the way that we write. But let's revise just a portion of this so that it does make a little bit more sense. I highlighted every other sentence just so you could see the variety. My uncle, Dr. John Trump, was a great professor, scientist, and engineer who worked at MIT. We had many discussions in which he would explain the power dynamic of what was going to happen with nuclear energy. There are 3 or possibly 4 volatile countries that have nuclear capabilities, or at least it is possible that they will have these capabilities soon. So here we have the or, properly combining the clauses. And here we have in which, again, properly joining those ideas. This state of affairs shows me that my uncle was right. He was right. They were great negotiators, and they killed us in the negotiations. So, now the story about his uncle is more prominent. He talks about who his uncle was, then he talks about what he learned from his uncle, and then he can kind of go into why this is important. We have a good variety of short, medium, and long sentences, and the message is a lot more clear. So you can imagine, in other cases, for a political speech or for an editorial, when you're trying to make an argument, when you're trying to convince somebody to do something, that the grammar could help. And as I said, he won the election because he had a lot of people who supported him. But I think that the difficulties in communication sometimes at least hurt the reputation with some of the media and with others. So just an example of how things can be broken down a little bit better. Here is a blog entry. I found this interesting because this particular blogger talks a bit about how she struggles with English, but she also enjoys writing poetry. So she has this great creative expression, and sometimes there are still grammar errors, but she's working on it and practicing. And that to me is what's really inspiring and really important. I've just broken apart again, every other sentence so you can kind of see where things are broken up. Once I realized that I could shape math into a subject I enjoyed by combining it with art and visually artistic elements, I attempted to literally and physically shape my words into their own little pieces of art on the page when I was writing poems for creative writing class. For example, in my piece, Les Vêtements, I don't know how to pronounce that, Les Vêtements, instead of just writing a poem about clothes and the contents of my closet, I decided to contour my words into the shape of a fashion mannequin in order to give the poem an abstract and refreshing finish. I realized that writing can be like fashion. I can dress my words according to its shape. So, the first sentence is long, but it's actually constructed correctly. We have a number of different clauses and phrases, but they're correctly joined. So we have once I realized, then we had a comma. I attempted to literally and physically shape my words when, it's our dependent marker word, when I was writing. So that dependent clause comes second, right? And so it's no comma, but it's joined correctly. The second sentence is also longer, but it's also correct. We have for example, and then the comma, then her piece. Instead of comma, I decided to contour in order to give the poem an abstract and refreshing finish. Okay. So the interesting thing here is that the shortest sentence is actually the one that has the error. And if you notice, there is a comma. I realize that writing can be like fashion, comma, I can dress my words according to its shape. This should be there, but that's okay. So we have a subject and verb, I and realized. Then we have a comma, and then we have another subject and verb. So these are two simple sentences incorrectly joined with a comma. And that means that we have a comma splice error. Comma splice error. So we've looked at two run-ons. Now we're going to look at this comma splice. This is not her poem, but this is kind of what she's talking about. It's called a concrete poem, where you move the words around so that they create a shape. Error. I realized that writing can be like fashion, comma, I can dress my words. So I highlighted the split, the comma, and then the second simple sentence or independent clause. I realized that writing can be like fashion if I can dress my words according to their shape. So now we have our independent clause comes first, so we don't have a comma, and then we have our dependent clause following it. The dependent clause is dependent on the independent clause to be a full thought. So now we have a complex sentence where things are joined the right way. Fix number 2. I realize that writing can be like fashion, period. I can dress my words according to their shape. So, full stop. What would be nice about this is we just had two really long sentences, so having two shorter sentences might give the reader a little bit of a break. Fix 3. I realize that writing can be like fashion because I can dress my words according to their shape. This is an independent clause, then we have our dependent marker word, and then we have another independent clause. Now, why did I do the same method twice? Well, here, I'm going to reverse this. If I could dress my words according to their shape, comma, writing could be more like fashion. The idea, if I could do that, then it would be more like fashion, right? Here, it's a little bit of a different idea. Because I can dress my words according to their shape, writing can be like fashion. So here we have kind of like if something happens, then something else will happen. And here, I'm going to put a BC for because. Because this happens, then this is the result. So a tiny bit different meaning. And really, it would be up to her. My really messy result there. Sorry, guys. Then it would be up to her. Which one does she really mean? They're very close in ideas. Neither one would be wrong. You could put a semicolon, but I don't think that the sentences are related fully enough in terms of the thoughts for them to be joined that way. You could also reword them completely. If you said something like, for me, comma, writing is like fashion because I can move the words around and create a shape, kind of like creating a dress, right? You could add some more words and some more details that way if you just wanted to rewrite it. Last one. Oh, I forgot we had this. Newspaper article. Oh, this newspaper article. Okay. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm laughing as I'm remembering. I found this with somebody who was not even an English teacher, but they were mad about this article and marked everything up and then gave the person an F+, which I find interesting because I don't know if it means that it's worse than an F or if it means like it would be an F, but it's an F+. Like, I don't think you understand how grades work. Sorry, I think I'm sorry. An F+ or D-, I don't know. And they put, oh really? College isn't necessary. So here's the problem. When you have this many errors, college might not be for everyone. A lot of people do really well just with a high school diploma. Some people can form their own business. They can become self-educated. Other people go to a technical college instead of a 2-year or a 4-year school, and that's okay. But if you are trying to make that point, you have to show that you yourself are self-educated and intelligent. So you don't want to write on a topic like education and then seem not intelligent, right? Having poor grammar doesn't communicate your expertise, and it makes you look not as smart, and like you don't really know what you're talking about. So marriage is something that every girl looks forward to during her childhood. I believe that every girl should marry every guy that is rich so they never have to work. Girls can just go and get their nails done and take the kids shopping. I just wanted to read a little bit of this to show you guys what this was about. All right, so there is a run-on among many other things. This article had spelling errors, it had run-ons, it had a couple comma splices, it had unclear pronoun references, which we will talk about later. There's a couple illogical thoughts, things that don't quite make sense. But let's just look at the run-on. Girls can just go shopping and get their nails done and take the kids shopping. I don't think that college is necessary because you go to school 12 years of your life and after that you should be done. So we have that misspelling there. This is a run-on. There are no comma splices. And if you notice, the split comes here. We're also missing an apostrophe with don't. So, fix number 1. Girls can just go and get their nails done and take the kids shopping, period. Here also there was a missing comma. Sorry. I don't think that college is necessary because, spelled correctly, because you go to school 12 years of your life, comma, and after that you should be done. Girls can just go shopping and get their nails done and take the kids shopping, comma, so I don't think that college is necessary, period. You go to school 12 years of your life, and after that, you should be done. So here, our first fix, so you can see that better. Our first fix, we have a comma plus a fanboys conjunction at that, and we put a period in. Sorry. So we put the comma in here, but our real fix for the run-on is to just put in a period and start a new sentence. The second fix, we have a comma and a fanboys conjunction. The idea of so, therefore, is she's kind of saying, because girls can just go shopping, I don't think college is necessary. Whether you agree with the idea or not, at least now it's fixed, and it would give a little bit more support for that idea. So let's review. Again, how teachers feel after reading run-on sentences. In real life, it might be difficult to identify clauses or types of sentences. I like to explain the dependent clause and independent clause. There's other things like phrases and other terms that I don't go into as much, because I just think you need to have a general idea how sentences are structured so that you can figure out where the error is. But one hint is to try to look for the split, where one idea ends and the other idea begins. Where is that first complete sentence and where is the second, and possibly sometimes where is the third or fourth or fifth or sixth, as we saw in one of our examples today. If you can't tell whether the problem is a run-on or a comma splice, that's actually okay, as long as you know that they're fixed the exact same way. You can add a period, that's that full stop. You can add a semicolon, that's our moderate pause. You can add a comma and a fanboys conjunction. It's a brief pause and a coordinating conjunction. For and nor, but, or, yet, and so. You can add a subordinating conjunction, those dependent marker words, to create a complex sentence, or you can just rewrite them completely. However you decide to fix it is really up to you. The choice is yours. The important thing is that there's not an error any longer. So if you have questions, you can leave them below, but this wraps up our time with run-ons and comma splices. Next time, we're going to look at how to properly use commas in other situations. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.